Welcome back to Risk. I'm Lee, and I have an old friend with me here, Mr. Ed Steer from my Wall Street Silver days. How you doing, Ed? Good to hear from you.
Good to hear your voice too, and Happy New Year to you and your listeners.
No, Happy New Year to you as well, Ed. So it's certainly gearing up to be an interesting 2020, wouldn't you say? I mean, 2022, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Last year was interesting, but that's just basically set the groundwork for what I consider going to be a tumultuous 2022.
You know, I'm looking right now. I know you're big into precious metals. I'm looking at the prices. We got silver down to like 22 change. Gold is floating around 1,800. What's your take right now? I mean, do you think that this is kind of a floor for them, or do you think we got a little more downside?
Well, that's the question everybody asks, and basically, the price is set in the COMEX futures market, and the 8 largest traders, are short more than 50% of the precious metals market in gold, silver, platinum, and palladium, and they control the price, and they're very, very short all these precious metals, and they're just doing their darndest to try to get out of them as much as they can. And they're trying their hardest to get out, but the fact of the matter is they're not going to get out. They're going to end up having to cover their short positions at some point, and when that happens, we're going to see the price take off. And right now, they're just pounding away in the markets, and that's why we're not seeing silver and gold doing very much at the moment.
So, I mean, this has been going on for a long time. Do you see anything on the horizon that will change the dynamics of the marketplace where, this will happen, where they'll get squeezed and price might go up?
Well, certainly there's no question about it. There is a physical shortage in the market, but it's been going on now for a year or so, and the market's just getting tighter and tighter all the time. And like I said, these 8 large traders, which silver analyst Ted Butler speaks of all the time, they've been like this for many, many years now, more than a decade, maybe 20 years. They've been basically sitting on the precious metals prices, well, actually going back to when we went off the gold standard 50 years ago. So this price management scheme is very, very long in the tooth, and you're seeing the price of everything else go up. I don't care whether it's crude oil or rice or sugar or tin or whatever you want to pick out of the commodities complex. They're all higher now than they were, say, 10 or 20 or 30 years ago, and the only one that's not at new highs is the silver price, and that's because they've had this huge, huge short position. And as long as they maintain that short position, the price isn't going to go anywhere. But the moment that the physical shortage hits, then you're going to see prices blow through the roof when that day comes, and you won't have to ask whether the price management scheme is over or not. As Ted says, it'll be evident in the price.
So I know that this has been a discussion or a thought for a long time about the shorts and everything. Typically, what I've seen since I've been following this market, got to be over 20 years now. When we have a big sell-off in the broad equity markets, precious metals usually take a hit as well. I mean, do you see perhaps a scenario ahead where that doesn't happen?
Oh, absolutely. But one of the reasons that the precious metals get hit is because the powers that be, these large 8 short traders, don't want the precious metals to be the go-to product. They want people to go into the bond market rather than go into the precious metals. So if the stock market is being severely hit, they'll certainly step into the precious metals market, so that that's a place that people aren't going to park their money. But like I said, after 50 years of this, they're at the end of the rope, and sooner or later it's going to happen that we're going to see precious metals prices go up when the stock market goes down. But that day hasn't arrived yet.
Was there a point, a time point in history where precious metals actually played a role as a flight to quality, similar to what short-term government bonds do now?
Oh, sure, absolutely. You go back before the COMEX futures market was around, where there was no way to control the price through the futures market. The gold price was the barometer for what was going on, as was the bond market. And once they came along and started, have a futures market in gold, I think was January 1st, 1973. Well, they've been controlling the price ever since. But no, in the past, gold was a barometer. It still is a barometer, as is silver and the other precious metals, and that's the reason they're sitting on the price, so it doesn't become a go-to asset for anybody wishing to get out of the stocks or bonds. But like I said, those days are numbered, because this everything bubble that we've got going on across planet Earth, in every country and in every stock market, that's all going to come to an end. And when that does, I can guarantee you that the precious metals are going to be the recipient of a fairly large portion of that money.
When I heard about the Great Reset and I started reading what's put out by the World Economic Forum, I thought to myself immediately, okay, this is now the big signal that the end game is here. Would you agree with that?
100%. There is absolutely no question about it. I had the great misfortune of reading G. Edward Griffin's book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, which, if you haven't read it, I urge people to buy the book. It's absolutely terrifying what the powers that be have in store for us. And this has been going on for, 120 years or so. And we're, ever since we went off the gold standard, and especially since the crash of 2008, 2009, where money printing became they just started running the printing presses 24/7, especially in the last couple of years since the bond market headed south. That was back in September of 2019. It has now gone absolutely parabolic. And this New World Order crowd is, they're biding their time. They've got their plan, and sooner or later, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if it happened this year, and sooner rather than later, because, there's just only so long they can keep this charade going, because people are, you can take a look at the stock market or the bond market's going up now. People just aren't buying into this thing anymore. At some point, they're going to pull the pin on this, and I don't know when it's going to be, but when it does come, it's going to be ugly.
I think we have to, as precious metals investors and people who followed this market for a long time, I think we have to give credit to the crypto space, because they have really educated so many people on what fiat is. And Ed, do you follow the crypto market at all?
I follow it. I must admit that I'm not involved in it. I remember way back when, at 5, 10, 15, or just after it came in, you could buy Bitcoin for almost next to nothing. And
could you imagine if you bought a whole bunch of it back then?
Oh my goodness! Trust me, I wake up in a cold sweat sometimes thinking about it, if you know what I mean.
No doubt about it. It's been very good to a lot of people. I mean,
oh sure.
I do not believe in the fundamentals. I've been very honest about that throughout my time on YouTube. I know people who make money in it. I've made a little money trading in it last year, but I mean a little bit, because I was only playing around with it. But to me, it's just talk about a everything bubble. I think that's one part of it.
Oh, absolutely, no question about it. And to the people who are smart enough, and are young enough, okay? Because I'm fairly old school. I was born in 1948. I'm at the very leading edge of the baby boomers, and to me, Bitcoin is like, what the heck is that? Some sort of new sandwich? And it just wasn't something. I've been steeped in silver and gold and precious metals, because when I was a child, silver was the coinage of the land: the dimes, the quarters, 50-cent pieces, and the silver dollars, which were all in common circulation and in common use in the 1950s and the early 1960s, until they pulled silver out of the coins in 67 and 68, I believe it was. So I was born, my feet are solidly in that. So when you come up with something that's, based on what, I just sort of throw up my hands. I think I'll keep my silver and I'll keep my gold and I'll keep adding to the pile. But there's no question about it. The crypto space for the young kids out there has certainly been an education for them, where they've learned, that you can't run this stuff off on a high-speed printing press, and that way they've come to know the value of precious metals. Sort of by osmosis. It's sort of got, it's a very short step from cryptocurrencies into the precious metals. And there's no question about it that the cryptocurrencies have certainly benefited the precious metals.
Well, let's just talk for a moment about what's going on in the precious metal space. There's this whole aspect of fiat precious metals in my mind. And I'm talking about the paper market in COMEX, but also all these pooled accounts.
Oh, you're talking about the pool accounts at Kitco and at Perth Mint?
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's something that, this is not a new issue. Okay, it's been around for 15 or 20 years or so. Ted Butler, who's the real world authority on silver, wrote about this back in 2008 and 2002 or whatever it was, long before John Adams and his friends got a hold of this. But I consider it to be just an absolutely enormous Ponzi scheme. and I wouldn't own an ounce of that. I'd rather have the physical metal in hand, but there's some people that, that they just want to buy it that way. And if the problem is if when silver does finally do its thing and gets to 100, 150, whatever the price is going to be, a lot of the people that have the money in the pool accounts at Perth Mint and at Kitco, they say, hey, man, I made my money, now I want to get out. So all of a sudden you find 25, 50, 75% of these people want to get out and cash their chips in. Well, I absolutely guarantee you that it will bankrupt both those companies, because there's just no way in God's green earth they're going to be able to pay out hundreds of billions of dollars or deliver the physical silver. So it's sort of like cryptocurrencies, but just a different flavor.
Robert Kientz had actually done an audit of the Perth Mint financials, and he discovered that it was just a complete Ponzi scheme. He runs the Gold Silver Pros channel. I don't know if you've been on that channel, but
yeah, I'm familiar with his name. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So my point is, to me, that it makes the pool size of actual precious metals that exist right now so artificially large, and that is a big factor to me in why the price is what it is or has been.
Well, the thing is that there's lots of demand out there, and these pool accounts sort of take away from physical demand.
That's exactly my point. Exactly my point. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no question about it, and it's the most risky thing. Ted Butler has warned about it 2 or 3 times in the past 15 years, that these basically the mints were running Ponzi schemes within their firms, and if my suggestion to any listener that has any money in that, to get out now and buy physical, or just get out and spend the cash someplace else, those you're just asking for trouble and staying in those things.
And I'm curious, how did you get into this space? Where did you start your career, and what led you into this?
Well, to tell you the truth, it goes back to when I was a small boy. I remember my grandfather, and I'm old enough, where my grandfather fought in Belgium and France during the First World War. And he was paid in silver and gold coins as I think he was a sergeant or something like that. And they would get paid once a month on the front lines to come around and hand out these silver and gold coins. He ended up with a whole bunch of these things. There really wasn't anything to spend the money on over there except cigarettes and stuff like that. It was very carefully controlled. So when he came back to Homestead in Manitoba, Canada, back in, he got wounded. They were charging a machine gun nest, and he got wounded and sent home. And every once in a while, when I was a small child, 5, 10 years old, 15, whatever, he'd bring these coins out, and I'd look at them and look at them and look at them. And there was mostly British coins, because that's what they were in France, so they got paid in those kind of coins. And he'd have some German coins. But my interest in silver and gold goes back to way back then. The next time was when the Hunt brothers came along, and I made a bunch of money when the Hunt brothers ran the silver price up. That I lost a bunch of money in that, and then I lost interest in it for 20 years until the internet came along. And then I started reading up on gold, and I got bitten by the bug. I think it was 1998 or 1997 when I really got into this. So I've been in this for more than 20 years now. And once I realized that the prices were managed, I said, this is something that I really am interested in, and I've been doing it now for more than 20 years, and I'm going to stick with this thing to whatever end, because I can see the end in sight from where I'm sitting right now.
What did you do career-wise before you got into the precious metal space?
Oh, wow. I spent 8 years in the Canadian high Arctic at the weather stations up there. We did upper air with balloons, surface weather, seismology, ozone sounds, cosmic ray research. So I worked at the rocket range in Churchill, Manitoba for a couple of years.
So you have a heavy science background. You're basically
heavy science background, and then to get out of the Arctic, I had to basically quit the weather service. So I ended up in working for Levi Strauss, GWG, in Edmonton, Alberta, and from there I went in. I think it was in 1981 when things really started to turn around, and I ended up in real estate, and I was in real estate for 27 years. But I never lost my interest in the precious metals, and while I was doing that's when the Hunt brothers thing came along, and once I got into that, then I sort of headed out the door in real estate and said, my life's work is going to be in the precious metals. And I've I started in 1997 or whenever it was as a part-time job. And since I think it was 2007, it's become a full-time career for me.
So why don't you tell me your thoughts on the real estate space right now?
Well, it's very local. That's one thing, after 27 years in the business, I could tell you it's very local. It depends on where you live. It's one market in Toronto, it's one market in New York, a different in Atlanta, different in Miami, and you go over to Palm Springs, or you go into, the middle of Wyoming someplace. Casper, Wyoming. I can tell you the real estate market's different. So every market is regional, but the problem is that with so much money being printed out there right now, everything is rising in price. We're seeing, I don't like to use the word inflation. I like to use the word currency debasement, because that's really what it is. It's costing more and more fiat dollars to purchase these items. The price of housing just about everywhere, there's probably no exception, including the town I live in Merritt, British Columbia. The prices are absolutely hysterically ridiculous. The first-time home buyer is basically shut out of the market because they can't even afford the down payment on houses anymore. And if they can't afford, then they're carrying a mortgage of $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. And that's a millstone that they're never going to get out from underneath unless they have a job that's very high paying. And there's not many of those, but the real estate market, like every other market out there, is based on fiat currency, and the more they print, the higher the price goes. And housing market is just one of the symptoms. It's one of the part of the everything bubble.
I mean, obviously the stock market that this applies to as well. I mean, really.
Oh, absolutely. You pick a market: stock market, real estate, collectibles. I look at the price of collectible cars and coins and stuff. They're going for millions of dollars. My dad drove a 57 Chevy. It was a Bel Air, but it was a very nice car, and I think he paid $975 for it back in the day. The condition it was in, I'd hate to think what you'd be able to get for it today if it was still around.
That's how. At a minimum, $30,000. At minimum, I would imagine it would be a lot more than that if it was in good condition.
That is how stupid things have become. To give you an indication, when I was a kid, if you wanted to mail a first-class letter in Canada, it was 5 cents anywhere in Canada. And Canada's a big country like the U.S. And if you wanted to mail it locally in town, it was 3 cents. And I remember the hue and cry back in 1964, I think it was, or 65, when the price of stamp went up to 6 cents. And the next year it went up to 7 cents.
Yeah.
And now, if I go down to the post office, it's $1.30. So if you're looking for a currency debasement, all you have to do is look at the price of a postage stamp or a McDonald's Big Mac. I remember when I was first time McDonald's showed up in Canada in a large city, and the lineup was enormous. You could buy a Big Mac, a small fry, and a drink for $1. And of course, as you know, those days are long, long gone. That's because of the currency debasement that's going on. And, I've lived long enough to have been when we had a gold standard and when silver coins were the coin of the realm. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners are in the same age category and same vintage that I am. But I remember when things were stable. And when the United States was a country that was loved and respected and admired, because I certainly loved and respected and admired it. And Americans are great, and Americans are still great today, okay? But it's the government and the CIA and the military and everything else. When you were a warfare state, what it's become since the Vietnam War is very, very ugly. And I'd love to see America return to what it was like under Kennedy. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen. And now we've got the New World Order breathing down our necks, and what's happened.
They basically seized control of all the world governments. I mean, I don't think there are any independent governments left anymore anywhere.
No, there's not. I mean, our own government here, Mr. Trudeau, Justin Trudeau, is basically he sold out to the New World Order many, many years before he even became prime minister. I remember his dad.
He's gladly a part of it.
Oh, yeah. I remember his dad. Okay, it was when he was prime minister, Pierre Trudeau. And if he were alive today, he'd kick his son's ass.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe he was following his footsteps. There are theories that he's actually Fidel Castro's real son. And if you look at him,
Yeah,
he looks a lot like him. It's
I,
pretty.
I've seen that rumor around, and I'd like to believe it's true, but I don't think it is. But it sure makes a good story.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So, I mean, let's boil down here, if you don't mind, on currency debasement as a risk, and what's happened in the past when currencies have been debased. I mean, I know when I was growing up, God, it was 1982 when they changed the content of copper pennies to mostly zinc, and it was because copper had become too expensive. Back then, I had no clue that that was actually a currency debasement. And they did the same thing with silver coins. I mean, first they went from 90%, I think, to 40% silver in U.S. Coins, and then they went to copper, silver plated copper. What are the after effects of that for a country?
Well, all you have to do is look at the Roman Empire, the denarius. I mean, they went from what 80% silver down to basically nothing. And you know what happened to that empire? It ended up failing. No country, no currency has ever survived unless it has a metal backing. And we're just living through the same thing on a worldwide. Instead of being a country or an empire, it is now the whole world is on this fiat currency system, and it will not survive. It is not designed to survive. It is designed to fail. The New World Order have been on this thing for 100 years, and you can see since the U.S. went off the gold standard and they took all the gold coins out of circulation, was it 32 or 30? I can't remember the exact year. Then they took silver out in 68. Then we went off the gold standard in 71. And now everybody's on a fiat currency system. This is not something that's, been done on a country base. This is the scheme to bring everybody under this new world order. And the thing is that all fiat currencies are going to fail, and the U.S. dollar and every currency in the world is designed to fail, and they are going to fail. And unless you're in something like hard assets, I don't care if it's rubber, tin, or aluminum, or steel, or whatever it is, those are the only things that are going to have value when this whole thing is over. And of course, the precious metals are at the apex, absolute apex of the pyramid. And that's what you have to be in if you hope to survive this currency debasement, because it's soon going to become hyperinflation once people decide to abandon the currencies. We saw that in Venezuela, Zimbabwe, the Weimar Republic in Germany, and it's happening here slow motion right now, and it's been picking up steam over the last couple of years, and it's going to get much, much worse.
You don't mind? I'd like to get back to the real estate market a little bit too, because real estate's a hard asset. I mean, it's actually buildings and property. Sometimes you have renters, or you live there yourself.
Yeah.
But similar to the precious metals market, there's this whole basic flood of fiat currency into it. Whereas in the precious metals market, it's COMEX, it's these pooled accounts. In the real estate market, it's all the financing that goes into it, the bonds and mortgages. So yeah. If you're a holder of real estate and you're not, I mean, would you compare someone who owns buildings on credit to someone who owns gold in a pooled account?
I would rather own a house on credit than precious metals in a pool account, because the thing about debt is that in an inflationary environment, not even speaking about a hyperinflationary environment, an inflationary environment is a debtor's best friend, because you end up paying the debt back with dollars that are worth even less. So there's nothing wrong. When I talked about the precious metal, I'm talking about the apex. Housing is the same thing. I mean, I can pretty much guarantee that, if once the market crashes, we're going to see a big hit in the housing market, because all that funny money will disappear, and housing values are going to plummet. I was 27 years in real estate. I've been through 2 booms and 2 crashes, so I know what's going to happen when that does happen.
Well, what happens if you do own your home on, say, it's valued right now at $1 million, just to throw a number out there, and you own it, you have maybe 10% equity in it, and then all of a sudden the bubble pops, the value of the house, you're not going to be able to get like 250,000 for it. What happens to that person? Do they sell the house, walk away from it?
They just take the keys and drop them on the banker's desk. That's what they do. I've physically done that myself on behalf of a vendor on more than one occasion. I told people The only choice you've got is to give the keys back to the bank. I've lived this and breathed this myself personally twice through two crashes, so I know all about it.
So how do you protect yourself in that environment? I mean, did you liquidate your assets, your real estate holdings
Well, I didn't happen to me personally. I'm talking about when I was in real estate. I would advise.
Well, I'm just trying to understand what you think would be best for one of my viewers who owns a lot of real estate, how to handle it. I mean, should they be selling into this up move here? They're real.
If they're heavily indebted, I certainly would. If there's going to be a problem for them, this is the top of the bubble. If I had a stock in, I don't care what it is, Tesla, IBM, whatever, I wouldn't own it. Okay, I did not at all. I would be out of the stock market now and have it in cash or precious metals. Housing, if you own it clear title and you actually live in the home, or you own it clear title and you rent it out, that's perfectly fine, because its value is going to go down, but the debt against it is always there. Okay, if you have a mortgage, the debt is always there, and the banks are there to make sure they get either their money back or they get the property back. That's a fact of life. So if you're heavily indebted and you have 90% equity in a house, man, I would hit the bid as soon as I had the opportunity. And if you don't know what that's like, rent the movie The Big Short from 2000. I got into real estate in 2007 because I could see this coming.
Right.
That's the reason I got out of real estate and got into this precious metals thing permanently.
That makes sense.
Because even in Canada, I could see that it was going to spill over here. And of course, they ended up printing piles of money. Now the prices are sky high again, but they just pumped up another bubble. That's all they did. So if you're heavily indebted in a house and you can't afford to make the payments, man, this is I wouldn't hesitate to put it up for sale and get what you can out of it now, because when the housing market does crash, your only option is to give the keys back to the bank.
How would you allocate your assets now? Would you be 80-90% precious metals? I mean, are you more conservative with that?
No, I'm not conservative at all. I'm 100% invested in the precious metals, which has not been the best scheme over the last year or so, but I've been 100% invested for like 15 or 20 years now. So, I bought a lot of the common name silver stocks like First Majestic Silver, Pan American, Wheaton Precious Metals, all these companies when they were just, basically just getting started. So I'm doing okay. So I'm not complaining, but I just don't see Lee, I don't see anywhere else I could put my assets. I don't want to put them in the stock market. I certainly don't want to put them in the bond market after the hit it took last week. No, there's a market that's going to get absolutely crucified.
Ed, I have to admit, I'm with you, man. I'm like 100% precious metals, and I have been for. I mean, I've played around with the equities, just trading them because I have a trading background, and I played around a little bit with crypto last year. But the bulk of my assets is in precious metals, and it will stay that way. I don't even really play with the precious metal stocks.
Yeah, no, I have my holdings, and I haven't, except add to them over the last 3 or 4 years to the positions I already have. I have the stocks I had 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I still have today. I've been fortunate, like I was able to buy First Majestic Silver for like $2 and Pan American Silver for $5, and I remember buying Wheaton Precious Metals when it first came out. I think it cost me 95 cents a share. So I'm ahead of the game. Yep. Pardon me?
You've done pretty well. You may not be Bitcoin well, but you've done pretty well.
I've done very well. If I'd known then what I know now, I would have just put all my money into Wheaton Precious Metals. But the thing is, you just don't know that. Like I said, I'm old school. I was born in the time when, we were on a gold standard, when prudence was, the dirty 30s, the depression of the 30s. My grandfather lived through it as a farmer, and everybody was frugal, and he didn't spend any money, and it was, it's only come later where the younger kids have no concept of what, being frugal is and what the depression was. And, that carried with me from the time I was, we were born poor, we weren't rich. And that's carried through to my adulthood. And now, man, I just, look at my grandfather, and he was a great light in my life. And, I said, this is the only way I'm going to survive. This is the precious metals. And So once I got back into it 100%, then that's where all my money went to, and I haven't changed,
You know,
and I'm not going to change.
I don't know if you've been through the same thought evolution that I have been, but uh, in the late 1990s, I was in a business where I would get the bulk of my money toward like one season, and I'd have to make that money last for the entire year. So I used to just keep it in the bank, but I'm like, surely there's got to be a better way. So I started diving into the financial space. I mean, I was obsessed with it for a good year and a half. That's all I did, like 24/7 was read stuff. But my journey slowly brought me to the point where I was afraid to invest in anything but precious metals, because I just, the risk level to me for everything else was off the charts, just based on going back to fiat currency and the Fed and inflation. I mean, have you been through a kind of a similar intellectual evolution with this, your view of the financial world in terms of risk?
Yeah, that's why I'm in precious metals too. I was in the general stock market back up until I think I was there through '87. There was a big crash there, and then the market got propped up again, and I stuck around until 1995 or so. And then I got involved in the precious metals, and for the last 15 years or so, I've been basically all in. I started off, 25% allocation in precious metals, and just kind of worked up from there. But at the time, the precious metal price management scheme was fairly brand new back in 1999, 2000, and nobody was listening. Now it's, it's undeniable. Everybody knows, and the fact that you and I are even speaking today, and the fact that Wall Street Silver even exists, the fact that website is there, they know perfectly well, like you do and everybody else, that silver's price is being managed, and they're the same. Buy it while it's cheap, and that's what you should do. And that's why I'm where I am today, because I just don't see anything else out there that's value for money compared to the silver market at 23 when it should be, or 22 when it should be 10 times that price. So. Like I said, I'm all in, and I'll stay there until this thing finally blows up.
Now, Ted Butler was a big influence on you, wasn't he?
Oh, absolutely. Well, Ted's been doing this for almost 40 years. He spent 25 years as a commodities broker on Wall Street for Merrill Lynch and Drexel Burnham Lambert, and he traded silver and these spreads and swaps and the commodities themselves. Just silver and every other, corn, orange juice, whatever commodity traders traded, he did. And so he's got the only person on the internet that's got any kind of trading experience in the COMEX futures market or in commodities in general. So when I latched onto him, I first heard of him in about 1999 or 2000 when he started publishing on the internet. And I latched onto him right away, and I really didn't start talking to him on the phone until about, 12 years ago. And it just sort of evolved into a thing where, I realized that, I've seen everybody, I've read everybody, and this is the only person that really knows what the commodity market is all about. And he's been on silver specifically for the last 37 or 38 years. So, as far as, who knows the most about the silver market, has the most experience in it, actually traded the commodities, discovered the price management scheme, every important thing that's ever happened in the silver market over the last 40 years, he's been at the very pointy end of that, including the J.P. Morgan's purchase of silver, J.P. Morgan taking over Bear Stearns, the leasing scheme back in the 1990s, and the leasing scheme that's just happening now between J.P. Morgan's clients and Bank of America. Nobody else discovered this. He did. So, when it comes to everything silver, I just go to the Oracle Delphi and say, look, this guy is the man. And so ever since I discovered it, I've been hanging on to the guy for dear life, because he's the only person that really knows what he's talking about.
So, well, Ed, I really appreciate your time today. I think it was a good discussion. Do you have?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's been my pleasure being on your show, and I hope that all your listeners get something out of it.
Oh, I'm sure they will. I really appreciate your time. It's been great having you on here, and I hope to have you back in a couple of months.
Entirely my pleasure.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us here at Risk, and we'll see you soon.